The first thing I saw when I opened my door was a realtor's smile, bright, practiced, and completely out of place in my hallway. Behind her stood two strangers dressed like they were touring a museum. The man kept glancing past her shoulder like he was already picturing his furniture. The woman held her phone up, taking quiet photos of my entryway, and between them, like proud hosts, sat my parents. My mother stood with her chin lifted and her arms folded, as if she'd been waiting for me to come home and applaud her initiative. My father leaned against the wall with that smug little grin he only wore when he believed I had no options. The realtor turned. "Oh, hi, perfect timing. We're doing a showing for the penthouse." I didn't answer her right away. I looked at my parents. My mother said loudly for the strangers to hear, "Showing for the $950,000 penthouse." My father's grin widened. "For your sister's debt," he said like he was explaining a simple household chore. "It sells today." The strangers exchanged a look, one of those polite, uncomfortable glances people share when they realize they've stepped into a family scene they didn't pay for. The realtor's smile faltered for half a second. "Mr. and Mrs. Harlan told me you were aware," she said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "They said everything was already handled." Handled. That was my parents' favorite word when they were trying to erase my consent. I could have screamed. I could have told the realtor to get out. I could have asked the strangers why they were photographing my home like it already belonged to them. But I didn't. Because my parents didn't fear anger. They feared paperwork. They feared the kind of calm that leaves no room for them to rewrite the story later. So I did something that made my father's grin tighten. I nodded. Just once. "Of course," I said pleasantly. "Go ahead." My mother's eyes sharpened, suspicious. She didn't like calm. Calm meant I was planning something she couldn't see. The realtor stepped forward, relieved, and started her routine. "This unit is one of the best in the building. Floor-to-ceiling windows, private elevator access." I walked to the side, letting them pass, and watched quietly while two strangers toured my living room and praised my view like they'd discovered it. Meanwhile, my parents stood in the doorway, listening like landlords. My father lowered his voice to me, just enough that the realtor couldn't hear. "Don't embarrass yourself," he murmured. "You don't have a choice anymore." I turned my head slightly. "I do," I said softly. His smile twitched. "No," he whispered back. "Your sister needs this, and you've had enough." That was the real confession, slipped out like a truth he couldn't help enjoying. My sister needed my home, my money, my life, because my parents had decided she deserved rescue and I deserved obligation. I waited until the realtor finished the tour and the strangers wandered toward the balcony. Then I looked at the realtor and said, still polite, "Can I get your card?" "Absolutely," she said, grateful for anything normal, and handed it over. I didn't read it. I just tucked it into my pocket like evidence. Then I turned to the strangers and smiled politely. "I'm so sorry for the confusion," I said. "This is my residence. There's a legal issue being handled today." Their faces shifted instantly, alert, uncomfortable, ready to back away from trouble. The man cleared his throat. "We were told it was a quick purchase." "I understand," I said calmly. "Please don't worry. You'll hear from your agent." My father stepped forward, voice rising just enough to reclaim the room. "She's being dramatic," he said. "We have the contract. It's already printed." The realtor looked between us, uncertain now. "Printed?" My mother lifted her phone and waved it slightly. "The attorney prepared everything," she said, sweet as sugar. "All she has to do is cooperate." Cooperate. Another word they used when they meant surrender. I smiled again. "Perfect," I said. "Then I'll meet you at the attorney's office." My father blinked. "You will?" "Yes," I said, already reaching for my keys. "Because I want to see the paperwork in person." For a moment, I saw it in his eyes. He thought I was finally breaking, finally giving in. He didn't realize I just made sure there were witnesses to the attempted sale, an agent's name, and two buyers who could later confirm my parents had presented themselves as authorized sellers. I walked past them without another word, took the elevator down, and drove straight to the attorney's office my mother had mentioned, because I already knew the name. My parents used him whenever they needed something to look official. The receptionist looked up as I entered, startled by my pace. "I'm here to see Mr. Halbrook," I said, "about a contract involving my penthouse." Her smile froze. "Do you have an appointment?" "I believe my parents do," I replied evenly. "But I'm the owner." That sentence changed everything. She disappeared behind a door. A minute later, the attorney himself came out. Mid-50s, silver hair, crisp suit. The kind of man who enjoyed being the adult in the room. He opened his mouth to speak confidently until he saw my face. Not angry, not panicked, just calm. And then he noticed the back of my hand gripping the realtor's card like it mattered. "Miss Harlan," he said carefully, "your parents said you agreed." "I didn't," I replied. "I want one thing before anyone signs anything." He held his pen, poised. "What?" "A current property record," I said. "Printed today." He hesitated, like that was an inconvenience. "It's routine," I added, still polite. "If everything is clean, it won't take long." Something in my tone must have landed because he nodded and turned to his computer. He typed, clicked, typed again. Then he stopped. Not dramatically, not theatrically. He just went still. His pen slipped from his fingers and tapped the desk. A small sound in his suddenly quiet office. He leaned closer to the monitor like he didn't trust his own eyes. Then he swallowed and whispered, almost to himself, "Locked. No transfer allowed." I didn't move. I didn't smile. I just watched his face drain of certainty. Because whatever my parents thought they had printed, the record didn't recognize it. And the attorney's voice dropped even lower as he added one complete sentence that made my blood turn cold. "This lock note was placed today, right before your parents started showing your unit." For a moment, nobody spoke. The attorney, Mr. Halbrook, stared at the screen like it had insulted him. His confidence didn't crack with drama, it simply drained, which was worse. Because men like him only lose color when the system stops obeying them. He swallowed and cleared his throat. This is unusual," he said, still half to himself. I kept my voice calm. "Read the note," I said. He hesitated, then scrolled down. Slowly, like he didn't want to. His lips moved as he read silently. Then finally, he spoke out loud in a whisper that didn't sound like a lawyer anymore. It sounded like a man realizing he'd been standing on thin ice. "Owner alert," he read. "Transfer restriction. Verify identity. Do not process instruments presented by third parties. Contact recorder's office security desk." I didn't react. I just watched him. Because the real question wasn't what the note said. It was why it was there. Mr. Halbrook's hand hovered near the mouse. "This lock was placed today." He murmured again, like repeating it might make it less real. "Right. Before your parents started showing your unit." I tilted my head slightly. "So my parents tried to initiate a transfer," I said softly, "and the record locked itself." He didn't answer fast enough. And in that pause, I felt something cold settle in my chest. My parents hadn't just hired a realtor. They'd already taken steps to move my property. Quietly, quickly, without me. I leaned forward just a little. "Who requested the lock?" I asked. Mr. Halbrook's eyes flicked to me, then back to the screen. "It doesn't show the name here," he said carefully. "It shows a trigger event, a filing attempt." "A filing attempt by who?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "Ms. Harlan." "I'm the owner," I said, still calm. "So I'm asking you again. What did my parents submit?" He opened his mouth like he was going to give me a soft answer. Then the office door behind me opened. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. I heard my mother's voice. First, too bright, too confident. "There you are," she said. "We told you she'd come." My father's footsteps followed, heavier, deliberate, like he wanted the room to feel him. They walked in like they were late to a meeting they controlled. My father looked at the attorney's screen, then at me and smiled. "Good," he said. "Sign and let's finish this." My mother held up a stack of papers like a trophy. The buyers are waiting downstairs, she said. We're not doing this back and forth. I looked at Mr. Halbrook. Print the property record out, I said quietly. Now. My father's smile tightened. Don't. Mr. Halbrook didn't move immediately, like he was choosing which master to obey. So I added one sentence that made the choice easier. If you don't print it, I said, voice still level, I'll request it directly from the recorder and include your office in the documentation. That did it. He clicked. The printer whirred. The sound was loud in the silence. My mother's eyes narrowed. What are you doing? She snapped. Mr. Halbrook pulled the page from the printer with a hand that suddenly looked unsteady and set it on the desk. My father grabbed for it. I placed my hand on the paper first. Flat, calm, nonviolent. My father froze. His eyes flicked to mine, and I saw the anger trying to break through his charm. Mr. Halbrook swallowed. It's locked, he said quietly. My mother laughed. One sharp sound. Locked? What does that even mean? It means, Mr. Halbrook said, voice tight, no transfer can be recorded until the restriction is cleared. My father's jaw flexed. Clear it, he said. Mr. Halbrook didn't answer him. He looked at me, and that tiny shift, his attention moving from my father to me, told me everything. Whatever this was, it wasn't a normal paperwork delay. My mother leaned forward, voice suddenly sweet again, like she was talking to a difficult child. Honey, she said, your sister is drowning in debt. You're living alone in a penthouse. Do you hear how that sounds? My father's voice went colder. Family comes first, he said. You don't get to sit on a $950,000 asset while your sister suffers. I nodded once, like I agreed. Then I asked the only question that mattered. What debt? I said. My mother blinked. You know? No, I said calmly. Say the number. My father's nostrils flared. It's not your business. It became my business when you brought strangers into my hallway, I replied. So, say the number. My mother's voice tightened. 200,000, she snapped. Maybe more, and the interest is brutal. 200,000. I didn't flinch. I didn't gasp. I didn't perform shock. I just looked at my father. And your plan, I said, was to sell my home today and hand her the money. My father leaned forward, eyes hard. Yes, he said, because you won't cooperate any other way. There it was, clean, confessed. Then I turned back to Mr. Halbrook. I want copies, I said. He blinked. Copies of what? Everything they brought, I said. Listing agreement, contract, any power of attorney, any signature page, any notary stamp, all of it. My father snapped, no. I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on the attorney. As the owner, I said, I'm requesting copies of documents presented as if they came from me. Mr. Halbrook hesitated again until the taller officer from earlier flashed in my memory. The same pattern. Confidence, then a pause, then paperwork taking over. Mr. Halbrook stood, walked to a cabinet, and pulled a file. My mother's face tightened. You can't give her that. Mr. Halbrook's voice went stiff. If documents were presented in her name, she has a right to review them. He placed the file on the desk and opened it. The first page was a listing agreement. My stomach went cold. Not because it existed, but because my name was typed neatly at the bottom, next to a signature that looked like mine. And wasn't. It was too smooth, too perfect, like a copy of a copy. My father watched my face, waiting for emotion. I gave him none. I turned the page. The contract was already filled out. Buyer names, price, timeline, everything polished and ready for a signature. And then I saw it at the bottom corner of one page, a notary block, a stamp, and a date. My eyes lifted to Mr. Halbrook. This notary stamp, I said quietly. Did you verify it? Mr. Halbrook's throat moved. Your parents said you signed. I didn't. I cut in, still calm. So I'm asking you again. Did you verify it? My father's voice rose. This is ridiculous. Mr. Halbrook didn't meet my father's eyes. No, he admitted. I did not verify it. My mother's face flashed with anger. Because you didn't need to. She always twists things. I didn't let her finish. I pointed at the stamp. Read the commission number, I said. Mr. Halbrook leaned in, squinted, and read it softly. My father shifted in his seat. Just a little, like he wanted to stand. Then Mr. Halbrook's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID, and the color drained from his face so fast it looked like someone turned down the lights. He answered on the first ring. Yes, he said. A pause. Then he said very quietly, Understood. He hung up slowly and looked at me like he was trying to decide how to say something without detonating the room. What? My father demanded. Mr. Halbrook swallowed. That was the recorder's office, he said. My mother laughed again, sharp. And? Mr. Halbrook's voice dropped to a whisper. They said the lock wasn't just a restriction. He said, it was a hold triggered by suspected fraudulent instrument submission. My father went completely still, and Mr. Halbrook added one more sentence. Soft, devastating. They asked if Richard Harlan is in my office, because they're sending someone over. For one full second after Mr. Halbrook said, they're sending someone over, my father didn't move at all. Then his chair scraped back. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't polite. It was the sound of a man trying to leave before the room turns into a record. I'm done with this, he snapped, already angling toward the door. This is a waste of time. Mr. Halbrook stood up so fast his office chair bumped the desk. Richard, he started. My father cut him off. Don't use my name like we're friends. My mother grabbed her purse in one sharp motion. Her face had changed too. No sweetness now, just urgency. We're leaving, she said. This is harassment. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't block the door. I simply spoke one sentence, calm and clear, aimed at the only person in the room who cared about liability. Mr. Halbrook, I said, if they leave, you'll be the last verified location of the forged documents and the person who received the recorder's call. That stopped him, because I wasn't threatening him. I was telling him where the blame would naturally land if he let this walk away. His jaw tightened. He looked at my father like he was seeing him for the first time. Sit down, Halbrook said, voice clipped. My father laughed once, short, ugly. You can't tell me what to do. Halbrook pressed a button on his desk phone. Reception, he said, voice suddenly very controlled. Do not let anyone out of this suite until I say so. And call building security. My mother's eyes went wide. Excuse me? Halbrook didn't look at her. He looked at my father. They asked if you're here, he said quietly. So yes, nobody leaves. Not until the recorder's office representative arrives. My father's face flushed like heat rose under his skin. You're holding us hostage? Halbrook didn't flinch. No, he said. I'm preserving a situation that now involves suspected fraud. The word fraud hit my mother differently than it hit my father. My father got angry. My mother got scared. She turned toward me like she could still shame me into collapsing. You would do this, she hissed, over your own sister. I kept my voice low. Over my signature, I corrected. Over my home. Over strangers in my hallway. My father jabbed a finger at the desk. That stamp is real. Halbrook's mouth tightened. Then you won't mind the recorder's office verifying it. My father's eyes flicked just once toward the file, toward the notary block, and I saw it clearly now. He hadn't expected verification. He'd expected intimidation. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the realtor's card again, not to call her, just to remind myself this wasn't a private family argument. This had spilled into the public world. Witnesses, names, paper trails. Halbrook sat back down stiffly. Ms. Harlan, he said to me, I'm going to make copies of everything in this file. My father snapped, No, you're not. Halbrook didn't even glance at him. As counsel, I'm now obligated to preserve what was presented, he said. especially after a fraud hold was triggered. He took the documents and started feeding them into the copier behind his desk with a kind of angry precision, like every page was another inch of ice cracking under him. My mother stood with her arms crossed, breathing fast, as if she could hold the room together by force. My father paced, 2 steps, back, 2 steps, like a caged animal. Then the door opened and a building security guard appeared. Broad shoulders, calm face, eyes that didn't care about family dynamics. "Sir," the guard said to Halbrook, "you asked for us?" Halbrook nodded. "Yes, please stay by the door." My father's voice rose. "This is insane." The guard didn't react. That's what power looks like when it isn't emotional. 2 minutes later, there was a knock. Firm, official. Halbrook opened the door himself. A man stepped in wearing a plain suit, not a uniform. He had a badge clipped at his belt and a thin tablet in his hand. He didn't scan the room like he was looking for drama. He scanned it like he was looking for positions. Who's closest to the documents? Who's moving? Who's trying to leave? "Recorder's Office Fraud Prevention Unit," he said calmly. "I'm Mr. Delgado." My father's jaw tightened. "We didn't do anything." Delgado didn't answer him. He looked at Halbrook. "You received a call from our security desk?" "Yes," Halbrook said, swallowing. "They said there was a hold." Delgado nodded once, then looked directly at my father. "Richard Harlan?" he asked. My father's chin lifted. "Yes." Delgado's tone stayed flat. "Sir, I need you to remain seated." My father scoffed. "Or what?" Delgado didn't rise to it. He simply turned his tablet slightly and scrolled. "An instrument was submitted for recording today related to Unit 41B, he said, eyes on the screen. "The submission triggered an owner alert lock due to a flagged signature pattern and a notary commission issue." My mother's face drained. My father went still. Delgado looked up. "Whose idea was it to submit the instrument?" My father snapped, "It was legal." Delgado's eyes didn't move. "That wasn't my question." Halbrook cleared his throat. "I was presented documents this morning." Delgado lifted a hand, stopping him gently. "I'll get to you, counselor." Then he focused on my father again. "Sir," he said, "I'm going to ask once more. Who directed the submission?" My father's mouth opened, then closed. My mother jumped in, voice too fast. "We're family. It was just paperwork. Our daughter is being dramatic." Delgado finally looked at her. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "family fraud is the most common kind we see." That sentence landed like a weight in the center of the room. Delgado turned back to his tablet. "The instrument submitted was a power document granting authority to transfer the property," he said. "It included a notarized signature. Our system flagged the notary commission number as expired." My father's eyes flashed. "That's wrong." Delgado didn't argue. "If it's wrong, the notary can confirm it under oath." My mother's hands trembled slightly around her purse strap. Delgado looked at me for the first time. "Ms. Natalie Harlan?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He nodded once, like he'd already verified it before stepping into the office. "Are you authorizing any sale of your penthouse today?" he asked. "No," I said calmly. "And there were buyers in my hallway." Delgado's expression tightened. Not surprise, just focus. "Do you have the realtor's name?" he asked. "I do," I said, and placed the card on Halbrook's desk without drama. Delgado glanced at it, then back at my parents. "Okay," he said quietly. "Then this is no longer just an attempted recording. This is attempted transfer activity with third-party involvement." My father leaned forward. "You can't accuse us." Delgado cut him off with a tone that didn't need volume. "I'm not accusing," he said. "I'm documenting." He tapped his tablet, then looked at Halbrook. "Counselor," he said, "do you have the originals of what was presented?" Halbrook nodded and pushed the file forward. Delgado didn't touch it yet. He looked at my father again. "Sir," he said, "I'm going to ask for your identification, and I'm going to note your statement. Refusal will be documented as well." My father's throat moved. He glanced at my mother. She stared at the floor. Finally, my father yanked his wallet out and slapped his ID on the desk like it offended him to comply. Delgado picked it up, took a photo with his tablet, and set it back down. Then he turned the tablet toward me slightly and asked a question that made my stomach tighten. Because it wasn't about the sale, it was about motive. "Ms. Harlan," he said, voice still calm, "has your sister's name been mentioned anywhere in connection with this filing today?" My chest went cold. Because if my sister's name was on the submission, then this wasn't just my parents acting alone. It meant my sister was in it too. My throat tightened for a second, but I didn't let it show. "Yes," I said calmly. "They said the sale was to pay my sister's debt." Delgado nodded once, like he was placing a piece into a larger file. "Understood," he said. "That helps." My father leaned forward again, eyes hard. "You're acting like we're criminals." Delgado didn't even glance at him. He opened the file and began scanning page by page, not with curiosity, but with the practiced caution of someone who has seen families destroy each other with paper. He stopped at the notary block. Then he stopped again at a signature page. Then he looked up at Halbrook. "Counselor," he said, "did you witness any signature today?" Halbrook's face went rigid. "No," he admitted. Delgado nodded, typed something into his tablet, and said the word that made my mother inhale sharply. "Good." Good. Not because it was good for my parents. Good because it was clean for the record. No witness, no verification, no legitimate chain. Delgado looked at the power document again. "Do you know what triggered the lock?" he asked Halbrook. Halbrook swallowed. "Your office said signature pattern and notary issue." "Yes," Delgado said, "but there was one additional trigger." He tapped the or tablet and scrolled. Then he turned slightly so Halbrook could see. "This submission used an identity claim," he said. "It asserted the owner was unreachable, and that urgent action was required to prevent loss." My father's face tightened. "That's true. She was unreachable." I held my gaze steady. "I was home," I said. "They brought a realtor into my hallway." Delgado's eyes flicked to me, and his voice stayed calm. "Exactly," he said. "Owners aren't unreachable when they are physically present at the property." Then he looked back at my father. "Sir," he said, "who told you the owner was unreachable?" My father's jaw flexed. "What does it matter?" "It matters," Delgado replied, "because that claim is how fraudulent submissions justify bypassing verification." My mother's voice cracked. "We weren't bypassing anything. We're family. We were helping our other daughter." Delgado didn't take the emotion. "Ma'am," he said, "help doesn't require forged instruments." My father stood abruptly, chair scraping. "That signature isn't forged," he snapped. "She signed it." Delgado didn't flinch. "Then we'll confirm," he said, and pulled out his phone. He dialed without asking permission. My mother's eyes widened. "Who are you calling?" Delgado kept his eyes on the screen. "The notary." My father's face changed instantly. It was subtle, but I saw it. His throat tightening, his eyes flicking once to my mother like he was silently saying, "Don't talk." Delgado put the call on speaker. It rang. Once, twice. Then a man answered, wary. "Hello? Mr. Crane?" Delgado asked. "Recorder's Office Fraud Prevention. I need to confirm a notary commission number on a submission made today." Silence. Then the notary said carefully, I'm in a meeting." Delgado's voice stayed even. "This will take 30 seconds. Do you recognize this commission number?" He read it out slowly, digit by digit. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to press against my ribs. Then the notary's voice returned, tight, cautious. "That number," he said, "was mine." My father exhaled like relief too fast, until the notary finished the sentence. "But it expired last year," he added. "I haven't notarized anything since then." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's face went blank. Delgado didn't react. He simply asked the next question. Did you notarize a power document for Natalie Harlan today? He asked. No, the notary said immediately. Absolutely not. Delgado nodded once as if he'd expected it. Thank you, he said. Do not delete any records. Someone is using your commission stamp illegally. The notary's voice rose. What? That's how. Delgado ended the call without drama and typed something into his tablet. My father finally exploded. This is a mistake, he snapped. You can't just. Delgado lifted his eyes to him, calm and cold. Sir, he said, your submission used an expired notary number and a false claim that the owner was unreachable. That is not a mistake. That is a method. My mother's face crumpled. We didn't. Richard, what is he talking about? My father's gaze cut to her, sharp. Don't. But it was too late. The mask had slipped, and she could feel it. Delgado turned to Holbrook. Counselor, he said, I'm placing an official hold on any transfer activity and requesting your office preserve all originals and copies. I will also be referring this to law enforcement. Holbrook's throat moved. Understood. Delgado turned back to my parents. Richard Harlan, he said, I'm documenting you as the submitting party. My father leaned forward like he could bully the room back into submission. You don't understand what she's done to this family, he hissed. Delgado didn't take the bait. This isn't family court, he said. This is property fraud. Then he looked at me again. Miss Harlan, he said quietly, I need to ask one more question, and you must answer truthfully. I nodded once. Do you have any reason to believe your sister was aware of the forged submission? He asked. My stomach tightened. Because I didn't want to say it. Not out of loyalty. Out of grief. I'd spent years trying to believe my sister was just careless, just irresponsible, just different. But a $200,000 debt doesn't appear by accident. And people who live under my parents' roof don't stay innocent for long, I answered honestly. I don't know, I said carefully. But my parents wouldn't do this unless they believed she would benefit. And she's been pressuring them to fix her situation. Delgado nodded and typed again. My father snapped, You're throwing her under the bus now? I looked at him calmly. No, I said. You drove the bus into my hallway. The air in the room felt electric now, like everyone understood the consequences were real. Then Delgado's tablet chimed. He glanced down, and his expression changed in a way that made my pulse jump. Not panic. Recognition. He looked up at my father and spoke very quietly. Sir, he said, we just received a second alert. My father's mouth tightened. What now? Delgado's eyes stayed locked on him. A transfer attempt, he said, on a different property. My blood went cold, because I only owned one home. So if another property was being targeted, it meant my parents weren't just trying to sell my penthouse. They were trying to sell something else connected to me. And Delgado added the line that made my mother gasp out loud. It's in your daughter's name, he said to my father. Not Natalie. He paused. It's in your granddaughter's name. My daughter. My stomach dropped. Because my parents had just proven they weren't trying to pay a debt. They were trying to erase me from every asset they could reach, starting with the one thing I would die to protect. For a second, I couldn't move. My mind did that thing it does when reality becomes too sharp, trying to reject it on a technicality. My daughter? She's 6. She can't own. But then my memory snapped into focus. A year earlier, after Grandpa passed, the trustee had insisted on protective planning. Not because of taxes, not because of strategy, because of my parents. The safest way to protect what's meant for her, the trustee had told me, is to place it where your parents can't touch it through you. So a small lake cabin Grandpa had owned, nothing like my penthouse, but valuable, had been deeded into a custodial structure in my daughter's name, with strict restrictions. At the time, I'd thought it was excessive. Now I understood it was a lifeline. Delgado's words hung in the air like a knife. A transfer attempt, he repeated. In your granddaughter's name. My mother's hands flew to her chest. That's impossible. My father didn't look confused. He looked angry that the system had spoken. Delgado held up his tablet slightly, not to show us everything, but enough to make one point. This was real. Live data from the recorder's alert system, he tapped once. Attempted instrument submission, Euchers, he read. Custodial property. Restricted. Then he looked at my father. Were you aware? He asked calmly. That a property exists under custodial protection for your granddaughter? My father's jaw flexed. He didn't answer. I could feel my pulse in my throat, but my voice stayed even. How would he know that? I asked quietly. Delgado nodded like he was already thinking the same thing. Exactly, he said. Access to that information usually comes from documents, mail, or someone inside your circle. My mother's eyes darted around the room like she wanted a door to appear. Then she whispered, Richard, tell them this isn't true. My father's eyes cut to her, sharp, warning. But Delgado wasn't watching my mother. He was watching my father. Because my father's body was answering even while his mouth refused. Delgado turned to Holbrook. Counselor, he said, do you have any other files in your office involving this family? Any matter where the granddaughter's name appears? Holbrook swallowed. No, he said quickly. Too quickly. Not that I... Delgado's eyes narrowed slightly. Check. Holbrook hesitated, then moved stiffly to his cabinet and opened a drawer. My father's voice rose. This is ridiculous. Delgado didn't look at him. If it's ridiculous, he said calmly, it will be disproven by records. Holbrook pulled out a thin folder and froze. I saw his face change before he spoke. Then he held it up, like it weighed too much. It was dropped off last week, he admitted, voice tight, for review. Delgado held out a hand. Who dropped it off? Holbrook's throat moved. He glanced at my father. Your wife. My mother jerked like she'd been slapped. I didn't... She started. Delgado opened the folder right there, flipping with careful fingers. And then he stopped on a page and looked at me. Ms. Harlan, he asked, is this your daughter's full legal name? He read it out loud. It was. My stomach turned cold, but my spine felt like steel. Delgado looked at my mother. You brought a minor's custodial property documents to an attorney, he said. Why? My mother's mouth trembled. I didn't know what it was. Delgado didn't move. You didn't read the header? She swallowed. Richard told me to... My father snapped, loud. Stop talking. Delgado's voice stayed quiet. That, he said, looking at my father, is exactly the reaction we document when someone realizes a paper trail exists. He turned the page, then he turned another, and then he reached a section with a signature line and an attached notary block. Same format, same style. Interesting, Delgado murmured, almost to himself. He glanced at his tablet and back to the page. Same notary commission number, he said. My mother made a small sound, half sob, half gasp. Because she understood now. This wasn't a debt plan. This was a system. They were using the same expired commission to manufacture authority, to move assets fast before anyone caught it. Delgado took a breath and looked at me with the calm seriousness of someone delivering a hard truth. Ms. Harlan, he said, I'm issuing an immediate protective lock on the custodial property as well. And because a minor is involved, this will be prioritized. He turned to Holbrook. Counselor, you will preserve this folder as evidence, he said. Do not copy it again. Do not allow anyone to remove it. Building security stays. Holbrook nodded, pale. Understood. My father leaned forward, voice low and vicious. You think you're so smart, he hissed at me. You think you can humiliate us in front of strangers. I met his eyes. I didn't humiliate you, I said quietly. You walked into my hallway with buyers. You walked into fraud with your eyes open. My mother's shoulders shook. We were trying to save your sister, she whispered, like that was a spell that could erase the rest. Delgado's voice cut through, calm and final. Saving someone does not authorize falsifying instruments, he said, and involving a child's property makes this far more serious. He looked at my father again. Richard Harlan, he said, I need you to understand something clearly. My father's nostrils flared. What? Delgado's tone didn't change. You didn't trigger a family argument, he said. You triggered a fraud investigation. A silence opened up in the room, wide, cold. My father's grin was gone completely now. What was left on his face wasn't authority. It was calculation. Then Delgado did the thing my parents feared most. He made it official. He raised his phone and spoke into it, crisp and professional. This is Delgado, fraud prevention, he said. We have an active case involving attempted transfers of a penthouse and a custodial minor property using an expired notary commission. Parties present, Richard Harlan and spouse. Counsel office is preserving originals. Request law enforcement response. My mother started crying quietly. My father stared at the desk like he could bend reality back by force, and I sat there, hands steady. Because for the first time that day, I understood what Grandpa had truly left me. Not just assets, protection, systems that locked when my parents tried to push, a record that didn't care who they were, a lock note that didn't negotiate. Delgado ended his call and looked at me. I recommend you do one more thing today, he said. What? I asked. Change your building access, he said, and secure your mail, because the only way they knew about your granddaughter's property was through information they shouldn't have. I nodded once. I will. Sirens didn't arrive dramatically. Law enforcement showed up the way real consequences show up. Quietly, efficiently, with forms and questions and body cameras and the kind of calm that makes guilty people sweat. They took my statement. They took copies of the lock notes. They took the realtor's name. They photographed the notary blocks. They asked my mother why she brought the folder. She didn't answer cleanly. They asked my father why he claimed I was unreachable, while buyers stood in my hallway. He couldn't answer at all. And when an officer finally looked up from his notes and said, Mr. Harlan, you need to come with us, Creedine Hasaros, my father didn't fight. He just stared at me with a look that promised this wasn't over. But he was wrong about one thing. It was over. Because the story was no longer in his mouth. It was in the record.